So glad you could join us for this very important topic, which frankly is important even without the current coronavirus situation, and perhaps made a little more, I guess I'll say, intense because of the situation in which we're dealing. So we first started addressing this topic, I want to say close to 20 years ago, in a number of different organizations. We've worked with teams and we've also worked with individual executives and managers. So I will do my level best today to share as many current and recent examples of the concepts that we are discussing. We have 5 key objectives today. We want to help you to manage your entire team remotely, to describe the benefits of developing time management skills, also to differentiate between different types of tasks, to help you to analyze and use some tools for organizing tasks, and to be able to practice some proven rules and techniques for managing your time even more effectively. So here is a core outline. And it's important, I think, to consider everything that we do in the context of solving problems. So we as managers, we deal with a variety of situations every day. And anytime we're faced with a new situation, a new problem, there's some work we have to do. So the first thing we have to do is to relate. We have to attend to ourselves and we have to attend to others. We have to do our best to understand what others are saying and then help them understand what we are saying. So we're sharing a variety of perspectives, whether it's 2 of us or 20 of us. And then of course we have to respond to each other, because our first objective in solving any problem is we need to gain a shared understanding of both where we are right now, today, this moment, this second. That's our current state. And we also need to gain a shared understanding of where we're trying to get to. What is our goal? What is our schedule? What is our desired state? So both our current state and desired state. That's the first step in solving any problem. And now that we hopefully are on the same page, the second step to solving any problem is to engage in some brainstorming and strategizing. So we engage in some discussions, and in most cases, we come up with 2 or 3 possible solution approaches. And once we've generated 2 or 3, or sometimes even more possible solution approaches, we have to make a selection. And so we have some more discussion and we say, what's our criteria for making a choice? Obviously, in most cases, the criteria is the solution approach we believe has the best chance or probability of being successful. So we narrow it down to 1, and once we make one choice of what our solution approach is going to be, we all have to develop action plans, the schedule of steps that each of us will take in order to hopefully successfully reach our desired state or desired outcome. And that brings us to the third step of solving any problem, and that's implementing our action plans. So we all execute the steps and we check our results. Let's say at some point we reach a conclusion as a team that the first approach that we chose is not going to quite be successful. We're going to fall short. No worries. We came up with, let's say we came up with 3 possible solution approaches initially, and that still leaves us with 2 remaining. So we return to when we were strategizing, and we say, okay, now we have 2 other solution approaches that we agreed to before, which of the remaining two solution approaches do we believe has the best chance of being successful? And once we make that choice, we update our action plans. It's time to now implement our new action plans. So we execute the steps and we check our results. And let's say on the second try, we are successful. We don't need to make any more adjustments. And frankly, we are ready to move on to the next situation. Well, as managers, especially now where we have people working in, goodness, 5, 10, 15, 20 or more different locations, it is critical for us to share with everyone on our team the processes we follow, the tools, the templates that we use, because the better a job we do of sharing these tools, these tips, these processes that we already use ourselves, the easier it will be on everyone to follow consistently processes, steps, implement action plans, and it will significantly increase the probability that we will be closer to each other when it comes to being on the same page. Very, very important, especially now that we are, many of us, so widely distributed. So we're focusing here on managing our entire team remotely. And in this first of 5 sections, we're going to understand how to give, we use a term, we call it site managers. And in this case, in the coronavirus environment, anyone who manages a site, whether they are working from home and just managing themselves, or working from home and managing other people, or in some instances, whether they are managing a team of people together at another location. That's right. In some instances, depending on the location of the team, as long as they follow social distancing practices, some teams are actually able to work together. So we use this term, site managers. How to give those who are managing in another location, site managers, a business roadmap that will keep them headed in the right direction. We'll also address here how to create crystal clear procedures that off-site staff will follow to the letter. Third, fostering friendly competition between sites. Could this be doing your company more harm than good? Then we'll take a look at how to quickly smooth things over when you have to lay down the law and enforce an unpopular policy from a distance. Fifth, the actions we need to take if we want to significantly slow down the email and the phone call blizzard from our people in the field. So giving our team a roadmap that will keep them headed in the right direction. Well, as we'll all see together in just a moment, communication, regular, and in some cases frequent communication is critical to getting and keeping everyone on the same page. And I want to give credit where credit is due. The first person I learned the value of having an all hands-on weekly team meeting is a wonderful gentleman by the name of Frank Reese. Now, we're going back a ways. In fact, we're going back before the internet, email, and websites were widely used. So we're going back to the late 1980s. However, there were about 65 of us in the Boston office of a company called US Telecenters, which eventually became a part of Sprint. And Frank would convene us every Monday morning from 8 to 8:15. He was able to keep these weekly meetings to just 15 minutes because he always had a simple, straightforward 4-item agenda. Agenda item number 1, what are the key projects we're working on? Agenda item number 2, what is going on in the marketplace. In other words, what is the state of our products and services? What is the state of our competitors' products and services? And what, if any, new laws or regulations are being enacted which could have an impact on our business? Then agenda item number 3, recognizing top performers. That's right. He did this every week. We do it every week. And it goes a long, long way towards boosting employee morale. And finally, agenda item number 4 was always Q&A, giving people an opportunity to ask us questions and to answer them. So there's a construct here for a weekly team meeting. We, of course, organize it, pardon me. We also prepare our agenda. And again, if you keep a consistent 4-point agenda every week, that doesn't take a whole lot of work. You facilitate the agenda. Then we distribute and discuss our communication plan. I'll use our organization as an example. My assistant Sherry takes notes. There's a pre-filled, based on the 4 agenda items, pre-filled form that Sherry adds the notes to. And within 15 minutes of the conclusion of our weekly meeting, Sherry emails those notes to everyone in the field. And we would be close to lost without her. She's very helpful. So our communication plan is to distribute the meeting minutes within 15 minutes of the conclusion of our weekly all hands on meeting. And you'll see some more detail in just a few minutes about our communication plan. We, of course, take advantage of the opportunity to discuss and clarify our norms and protocols. There's a very important ground rule at stake, which is that everyone is accountable, including us. I would go so far as to say, especially us. That's part of being a leader. And everyone, before, let's say, that weekly all hands on meeting occurs, before that meeting ends, everyone should understand clearly, what are my action items this week? What's my action plan for this week? And of course, we distribute the meeting minutes immediately. So next, how can we create crystal clear procedures that off-site staff will follow to the letter? Well, in any case where we have a set of procedures and steps, we want to outline the specific procedures, provide the steps, include and clarify the reporting process. So in our case, we have 6 client site managers in the field. They are the direct reporting lines for virtually all of our employees. At the same time, though, I do let everyone know that even though I am perhaps a bit removed from your day-to-day operations, that anyone can call me anytime. And I'm sure that I share with them an example of what I mean. And the example I share is sometimes people are having a problem with their manager that they can't seem to resolve, and they need someone to turn to. All right. We also want to be sure that we regularly check to clarify and confirm. I'll share an example of that in a moment. So for now, let me ask and answer this question. What are the benefits of fostering friendly competition between site managers? Well, I offer this, and this is one perspective. It is not the best answer or royal road. My perspective on this is as follows. I stand ready, willing, and able to answer anyone's question. And I want people in different locations to compete in a friendly way. That having been said, I just share this with you broadly. Our experience has been that people in the sales and customer service functions compete with each other very well. And I believe one of the reasons for this is that the metrics that sales and customer service professionals use are very clear. In sales, how many sales did you make? What were the dollar revenues generated from the sales that you made? If you're in customer service, perhaps in a call center, how many calls did you answer today and this week? And also, how many clients who spoke with you reported 100% customer satisfaction? And especially if a customer called you with a problem and you were able to solve it, kudos for you. So we recognize people who are performing at a very high level. At that having been said, in customer service, numbers of calls handled per hour, percentage of customers reporting 100% satisfaction, just a couple of the easily measurable criteria that we can use with customer service professionals. So within those two roles and functions, we have found that friendly competition works very well. Outside of those two, again, this is our experience, it has not worked as well. And we welcome later during the Q&A portion, if someone has a different perspective, we'd love to hear it. Okay, so next, how can we quickly smooth things over when we have to lay down the law and enforce an unpopular policy from a distance? Well, here are some suggested guidelines. First, schedule the agenda item on your next group conference call. We're going to discuss such and such policy. Then prepare for the discussion by understanding and writing down the rationale for the policy. Anticipate any challenges to the policy by listing them in your responses. So that's right. Engage in a little rehearsal. It will help you. Or remind everyone of the value to the team for enforcing the policy. So let me just share a quick example here. I'd like to use our expense reporting process as an example. So we would be discussing our expense report policy, which we do at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. And I always prepare for the discussion by understanding and writing down the rationale for the policy. In other words, first of all, we are answerable to our clients, so we have to be exact to the penny for our expenses. We also engage in a reporting process, so consistently our clients are informed of what our team members have reported. So that brings in the necessary accountability. The other element of the rationale for our expense report policy is twofold. First of all, it comes to us directly from the IRS, so we certainly want to follow it and obey all laws. And the other is that different people use expense reports in different ways, and we understand that. However, our clients expect precision. They expect no overruns, and we don't allow for that. They also expect us, and this speaks to one of our core values, to be ethical, to report accurately what they used. Okay. Other thoughts here about smoothing things over. Anticipate challenges to the policy by listing them in your responses. It's important to give yourself that preparation. And finally, this is almost one of my manager's mantras. Remind everyone of the value to the team for enforcing the policy. Well, first of all, we obey the law. Secondly, we are consistent. Third of all, we answer to our clients. And fourth, we prepare because we are just now starting to see in the month of May in several states. I want to emphasize this is on a very small level, but in several states, we are being, as a firm, invited back. So I'm encouraged by that. All right. So what are the actions we want to take to slow down the email and phone call blizzard from our people in the field? Well, verify your team communication plan and norms and protocols. And if you are thinking and saying, we don't have a team communication plan, well, you can start one on something as simple as a piece of lined paper. And I share that just as an example, mostly because we do have a great deal of content to get to today. However, to slow down the email and phone call blizzard, you want to verify your team communication plan and your norms and protocols. This gets and keeps everyone, or most everyone, on the same page. Secondly, you want to ensure that there are standard reporting forms distributed and available. Third, communicate how clearly certain forms are to be distributed. Fourth, if a site manager needs to communicate with you about a personnel matter, establish these guidelines. Compose an email. Include in the email message how you tried to solve the situation or how you want to solve it. Third, communicate clearly how frequently certain forms are to be distributed. That's once a week. So I will tell you, I'll use the expense report example. Our process is that unless someone is traveling over the weekend, they must submit their expense report by 5 p.m. Eastern Time Friday. If they travel over the weekend, they're expected to submit it by first thing Monday morning at 9 a.m. We do grant some exceptions depending on how far the person's traveled. And I will say I've been finding, now I'm talking about several friends here, to use a more casual approach has allowed others to open up more. So I just encourage you to think about that. Okay. So let's hone in now on point number 4, because in point number 4, we're going to address a process. It's not just about when someone wants to communicate with you about a personnel matter. If someone wants to communicate with you, I encourage you, if you haven't already, to establish these guidelines. First of all, so now this is me talking to my people in the field. I want you to first compose an email describing the situation. Next, include in the email message, and this is critical, how you tried to solve the problem or how you wish to solve the problem. And I give credit here where credit is due. That would be Dr. Harry Rubash, who is now the retired chair of orthopedic surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital. He is the one who taught me to limit myself because others younger than I are ready to step in. And he's right. We had quite the adventure yesterday. Did eventually track down everything and everyone. However, cost me more. That's right. Cost me more. Okay, so let's set that aside though. What this 4th item on this slide is about empowering our people in the field to make decisions and solve problems. So Dr. Harry Rubash is the one who taught me this second bullet point under number 4, because they have 70, or they had 70 people in their department. And I said, Dr. Rubash, I know you're a fairly open and open-minded individual, but how on earth do you manage such a large department if people are stopping by. And he said, well, it's actually a little sad. She said, um, some have not noticed it. She would not name names, but she said, I've been tremendously isolated at. Okay, so now we understand from Dr. Rubash. I asked him once, I said, you have 70 people in your department. How do you possibly allow anyone access? He said, well, the process, the way we have it set up is this. First of all, anyone and everyone is empowered to make decisions and solve problems. And he said, first of all, we encourage them to check with each other, with their peers, before they make a decision or try to solve a problem. Get some help from one of their colleagues. If that doesn't work, then we encourage them to contact their manager and explain to their manager how they tried to solve the problem or how they wish to solve the problem. And ultimately, he said, that is the condition under which anyone can come to me, which is you can come to me with a problem as long as you have either tried to solve it and failed, which is fine, it happens to all of us, or you have an idea of how you would like to solve the problem that you want to run by me. The next step is to, and now this is back to me talking to my direct reports, contact me by email requesting a date and time for discussion. However, before you send the email, ask yourself, am I already empowered to solve this? And anyone who works in our firm will tell you the answer is yes. So if so, try to solve the problem and save us both time. Try to make a decision. Consult with your colleagues. I mean, I'm still there as a last line of defense, but please follow these other steps first. Try to solve it yourself. Try to work with a peer, a colleague. If that fails, then speak to your manager. And if that fails, then you are okay to speak with me. All right. So now we're ready to look at what we call the time management skills hierarchy. We're now going to take a deeper dive into managing our time more effectively. So when we were kids, we'd play, and we had this side street not far from our house in northern New Jersey, where all us kids would meet up on the street, and we would either play kickball or softball or some other game. And before we got together, we might be out in the morning playing some other game, and one of us would say, hey, yeah, let's get together right after lunch. We're like, okay, so like what time? And everyone just said 1 o'clock. And we're all just like, okay, see you at 1. So I'll remember. No real formalized system. Then as we started to grow older, I recall, I'll speak for myself, I remember in high school, started to develop what we call an ad hoc system. I would use Post-it notes. I did not, but several of my friends actually tied a string on their finger, which boggled my mind. Other times we might write a note on a napkin before we get back to some place where we can make a formal entry. And I don't know about you, but in the early 90s, I did use an appointment book. It's a little black book, which now, of course, resides on my desktop calendar, my whole schedule. And that brings us to today. We're using organizers, smartphones, Outlook, maybe a combination thereof. And so all I suggest today is that whatever system you are using is your efficiency-driven system, and it's worth honoring. For the most part, it may be working fairly well. And so the overriding goal, though, of today's webinar is to help you take those existing tools, that you're using, your efficiency-driven system, and make them more purposeful, more focused, better prioritized. So in other words, taking the same tools you're already using and giving them what we call a mission focus, a purpose, understanding why we are doing what we're doing, what the schedule is, who else is helping us. And to keep us focused, I share with you at the bottom of the slide a quote from noted time management expert Ed Bliss, who once said, "Effective people begin not with their work, but with their time." So I know it says module 1. This is actually module 2 of 5. We call this changes and choices. And the operating principle here is that knowing why we are doing what we are doing, knowing the purpose of what we are doing will get us through any how. So you see, the moment we buy into a process, a project, a goal, and we can gently persuade some, or in some cases, maybe many of our team players to join us, buck the trend, and do everything we possibly can to win. So, a question for you: how do you think we make most of our choices? Do we make most of our choices based on impulse, unconscious choice, on pressure from others, by habit, or by default? Well, the good people of psychology today have conducted this survey every year for at least the last 60 years. And the answers from people on their survey have consistently remained very close to the same. So from their most recent study, Psychology Today tells us that we make about 2% of our choices based on pressure from others. Another 2% of our choices we make based on impulse. Yet another 2% of our decisions we make by default. Approximately 9% of our choices we make via a conscious choice. And then approximately 85% of our choices are made by habit. Now, in case you're doubting such a high percentage for habit being the reason why we make 85% of our choices, think of it this way. Just think of the routines you followed this morning to get ready for work, to get dressed, to commute to work, or to set yourself up today to work at home. Now, we all understand those have changed. At the same time, I suggest that possibly some on this webinar are, in fact, not only working, but commuting to work. And I say that only because though I am mostly working from home, I do drive around a little bit and I see quite a few cars on the road. So these people have to be going somewhere. So this is how we make most of our choices. And I'll elaborate on how Psychology Today and we arrived at this formula. So you see, we make 85% of our choices based on habit. So I was sharing with you that example of, we all have a morning routine. Well, at some point along the way, we made maybe 10 decisions total about what we needed to do every morning to get ready. And in some cases, maybe the sequence. For example, as a male, I say that I shower before I shave. And, some incorporate shampooing and everything. But the point is, whatever routine you followed this morning to get ready, you made a series of, I will guess, about 10 different conscious choices. This is the order of tasks that I will complete at home to get myself ready for work. Yet you did it this morning. I dare suggest either not thinking about it all or barely thinking about it because you've reached a point of unconscious competency. While you made, let's say, maybe up to 10 choices, 10 conscious choices about the routine you were going to follow, every day you make those same 10 choices without thinking about it. So if you've had your morning routine for even as little as, 20 days, well, even if you've had your morning routine for only 3 weeks, let's say, the first 3 days you were making conscious choices. And the 18 days since, you have been repeating without, for the most part, thinking about it, the same steps for which you made conscious choices. So with this 85% of our choices being made by habit, there are 4 stages of habit change. For example, I decide that once I get to work, I am going to take the first 5 minutes to sip a cup of coffee and review my schedule and make some decisions. So at first, though, I don't realize that I have a problem. So I'm unconsciously incompetent. I'm not aware that I have a problem organizing my day and my time, nor do I initially know how to solve the problem. So now I make a conscious choice, a conscious decision to prioritize my day, but I still don't know how to prioritize. That brings us to conscious competency. This is where someone has introduced me, and they did, to a system, which I'm sharing with you today, for planning, prioritizing, and making decisions. So the day that was introduced to me, I then became consciously competent. I'm aware that I'm a little disorganized when it comes to planning and prioritizing my day, yet my good friend Mark has shared with me a system for planning and prioritizing my day. So now I've become consciously competent. And once I implement my system for planning and prioritizing, which I first did close to 20 years ago, I became unconsciously competent. I plan and prioritize every day practically without thinking about it. I've been in this routine now virtually every day for 20 years. And so I can follow every single step of this process without even thinking about it. That brings us to the third module, tools and rules for managing time. And the guiding principle for this section is that maximum performance requires tools that effectively link activities and information. So let me suggest that there are 6 skills that we need to continually hone, refine, and improve in order to become more and more efficient, and then more importantly, more and more effective. And these 6 sets of skills include keeping track of our commitments, keeping track of others' commitments to us, planning, prioritizing, documenting calls, meetings, and other communications, and following up. So here are a list of potential current tools we may be using and some recommended tools. So now let's look at each of these 6 sets of skills and take it across to understand the skill, the current tools we might be using, and tools we recommend. So for keeping track of our commitments, we may be using our brain, lists, our computer, napkins, Post-its, organizers, calendars. And yet the recommended tool we suggest for keeping track of our commitments is our to-do and activities list. And I'll be explaining some of these. In fact, I'll be explaining all of them as we go through today's webinar. In fact, I'll offer myself as an example. My to-do and activities list starts as a running to-do and activities list. I don't mean that I run when I put it together. I mean that I have a black binder with a bunch of loosely stacked lined paper, several pens and pencils, and some tape if I need it. So my to-do and activities list starts with my little, well, my 8.5 and 11 black book. I open it up. I have a number of loose leaf pages in there, unbound, and I start writing, and I keep writing there all day, many times. And I'm fortunate in that I do have an assistant who helps clean up after me, I suppose is the best way to put it. Okay, the next set of skills we want to continually hone, refine, and improve is keeping track of others' commitments to us. And the tools we might be using now are our brain, the other person, hopefully not, our calendar, Post-its, nothing, our timeline, and or our computer. Yet the recommended tool for keeping track of others' commitments starts with our to-do and activities list. I mentioned before my black binder with the loose leaf pages. That is my running to-do list. Anytime I think of something that I need to do or that I need someone else to do, I write it down. And then at several junctures during the day, I transpose that information onto one of 3 devices. So you should know I have 3 devices that are synced up: my smartphone, my laptop, and my desktop PC in my office. So at 3 different junctures during the day, I make sure I upload everything on whatever device I'm using so it is shared among all tools. The next set of skills that we want to continually hone, refine, and improve are our planning skills. We might be using piles, and I'm going to own up on this one. For many years, I was a 7-pile person on my desk, one for each day of the week, which some might think is well organized, and to a degree it was, but I needed to do much, much better. And I'll explain what I did in just a few minutes. Other tools we might be using for planning: a big desk calendar, lists, whims. Who, me? Plan? And the recommended tools for planning include a paper calendar, a smartphone, a timeline, paper and pen or pencil. Next skill set is prioritizing. And we might be using lists, urgency, my boss if I'm lucky. Let me explain that one. This came up in a seminar once. One of our attendees mentioned it. And we engaged in some very vigorous discussion and made the following suggestion. Your mom, your dad brought you up and enabled you to be successful. How about you go back home, even though you have your own place, and spend some time with your mom to help get her together? And there you go. So for prioritizing, we might use our lists, urgency, my boss if I'm lucky, and or whoever is on top of the pile. Well, I can see that someone is thinking about it, and we're not getting a course correct here at the moment. However, what we recommend for prioritizing effectively is using our to-do and activities list. The next skill, I'm going to own up to a big mistake that I made for years. The skill is documenting calls, meetings, and other communications. So I own up to you that for a number of years when I was first managing, I was not very good at documenting calls, meetings, and other communications. And it wound up hurting me from time to time. So that was my wake-up call. And I believe I've significantly improved. People tell me I have. For documenting calls, meetings, and other communications, the recommended tools are Paper, Outlook, Word, Smartphone. I use several of these, and I'll explain why in just a couple of minutes. And finally, for following up skills, the current tools you might be using are other people, that's shaky, Post-its, lists, calendars, or my brain. And yet the recommended tool is our to-do or activities list. All right. So why do we recommend these tools for organization? Well, we recommend a paper organizer or calendar because they are portable. They help us plan anywhere from a week to a year, and they are cost effective. Next, why would we recommend a computer organizer or calendar? Well, first of all, they keep track of dates and tasks, especially at work, facilitates internal communication, interesting. Okay, the master personal calendar. What's so special about that? Well, excellent. So we've talked about why we use a paper organizer calendar. Why do we recommend a computer organizer, calendar, or smartphone? Well, because these tools help us to keep track of dates and tasks, especially at work. They facilitate our internal communication, and they give us a degree of power. Now, we don't mean power over other people. We mean the power of information to influence others. Why would we recommend a master personal calendar? Well, because it supports accountability and gives us one single source for planning. So for anyone not familiar with the concept of a master personal calendar, it is exactly as the name suggests. It is one calendar posted somewhere, which has not just every aspect of your work, but every aspect of your life on it. That's right. Next, a daily to-do list or activities list. Why? Because this tool tracks us, prioritizes us, keeps everything in order. So after I step away, I ask myself, how on earth are they able to sleep? Can't be easy. The next tool we recommend for organizing is our daily to-do list. And we recommend this because this daily to-do list helps us to track tasks, prioritize, and plan each day. We recommend a timeline because a timeline gives you an at-a-glance game plan for your day, and we recommend a filing system, which I've sworn by for over 30 years. Sorry, I'd say over 40 now. Wow, that's amazing to think about that. Because a filing system allows you to both organize and retrieve information. So now let's start to take a closer look. We see 6 tasks identified here from our calendar, and these activities are also known as the be theres. In other words, I have to be there by such and such a time. And a number of these activities were either doctor's orders, coach's suggestion, a little bit of both. It's very, very interesting. It's a fascinating study. Well, so we see with this highlighted window that there are 6 activities highlighted on our schedule for today. I promise you'll see more and less soon. Then what about our to-do list or activities list? How does it work with Outlook and today? Yeah, it's tricky. So what we see here are 4 activities. We look in the far left column and we see A1, A2, and A3. Okay, we'll understand that in more detail in a little bit later. In notes, we see Cindy. So Cindy is involved in talking with Sam regarding job order number 2675. And then before we pick up the phone at all, we take an analytical look at our calendar for the day. We see 4 activities and we start to estimate the time that we believe we will need for those activities, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 90 minutes. So we add in a 20-minute buffer. That's 10 minutes between activity 1 and activity 2, and 10 more minutes between activity 2 and activity 3. This gets us 75. Very important. Very important that we share that information. Okay, so let's introduce another concept. It's called time charging. And time charging is where we write activities in a place that your mind trusts that action will be taken at the appropriate time. And one thing I've learned that's important here is your mind has to trust wherever you write or record information that you are going to transfer that same information into a resource that needs it. This is true. So we ask, how do we time charge? Well, we ask 3 questions. What activity needs to be done? When does it need to be done? And where is the necessary information stored that I need in order to do my job? All right, so let's return to the big presentation. Thank you. And let's understand that now we're going to take a closer look at what is now Module 4, Prioritizing and Planning. And the guiding principle for this module is that dedication to items that are important but not urgent is what distinguishes effective individuals from ineffective individuals. And boy, will I share some examples here. So to do this, we first want to understand our definitions of urgent and important. Important is defined as being marked by or indicative of significant worth or consequence, and therefore valuable in content or relationship. Whereas urgent is of a state or situation requiring immediate action or attention, or when it comes to the urgency of action or an event, this is done or arranged in response to a pressing or critical situation. And now we're going to look at 4 quadrants of activities. So now we look at all our activities because all activities fall into one of 4 quadrants. This is where we measure importance and urgency and see where the intersections arise. So there are some activities that are both highly important and highly urgent. We call these Q1. And these activities must be done now, or else there will be both immediate and severe consequences. The next category of activities are activities that are highly important but less urgent. We call these quadrant 2. And the consequences for not doing these are the important but not urgent activities, are severe. However, the consequences are not immediate. So this is the area where we make the biggest and most consistent mistakes. The consequences for not doing these important but not as urgent activities. I knew I'd get it out. The consequences are severe but not immediate. So the mistake we make with cattle is that we should be advancing the process as soon as the baby is born. That's right. A third set of activities are matters that are of low importance to us, but seemingly high urgency to someone else. We call these quadrant 3 activities. And they grab at our attention, but they're not actually as important as they feel. And finally, there are activities that are neither important nor urgent. We call these quadrant 4 activities. And these are the things we do when we really should be doing something else. So within our activities grid, quadrant 1, urgent and important, such as crises, problems that have immediate impact on customer satisfaction, a matter that is mission critical and on a deadline, it cannot wait. For example, your boss demands a certain report by 10 a.m. tomorrow, then your boss wants it first thing tomorrow. Lo and behold, your boss wants it today before you leave the office. That's right. Happened just yesterday. An experienced 6th grade. That's right. Okay. Quadrant 1. Your boss demands a certain report by 10 a.m. tomorrow, then it becomes 9 a.m. tomorrow, then it becomes, oh, I need it today before you leave. Your engine blows a gasket. The labor pains are 3 minutes apart. It's April 15th and you haven't finished your income tax form. Some people say, oh, that's okay, I'll file an extension. You don't want to count on that. Then there's quadrant 2. These are matters which are important but not urgent. So now we look at quadrant 2. And let me say this. This is the quadrant where we want to be spending as much of our time as possible. We want to be focusing as much as possible on matters that are important but not urgent. Because let's face it, when they are both important and urgent, we often have the tendency to rush. So matters like strategic planning, personal development, relationship building, program evaluation, clarifying vision and values, these are all important. For example, a special course you want to take to upgrade your professional skills, writing your mission statement, that new project you would like to suggest to your boss once you do some preliminary fact finding, a focused planning meeting, starting that retirement account, exercising with your kids. We'd all agree these are important but not urgent. Then there are those urgent to someone else but not important to you activities, including many emails, some phone calls, and some meetings. For example, someone asks you to chair a fund drive or to give a speech or to attend a meeting, which is a low priority, but because someone is standing in front of you, and because these have built-in time limits, they often get done, while quadrant 2 activities don't. It's a big mistake. Another example is a coworker interrupts you several times a day with information that is not that important. Then there's quadrant 4, matters that are neither urgent nor important. junk mail, spam, escape activities, time wasters. For example, you're planning to do some specific work and instead you end up organizing your desk, straightening up the drawers, reorganizing your files, TV more often than not, many things you feel bad after because you kind of wasted your time. Well, we conduct this as a seminar for managers all over the world. And we always ask them this question: how will you use your time more effectively using important and urgent? And here are their 5 most frequently offered answers. First, educate my team members about scheduling our conversation. Don't just come up to me out of the blue. Schedule the conversation. Many others have said we like the idea of top 3 priorities. No more than. This will help keep me focused. Another response to this question about time is a number of people said they like plan today first, review my success at the end of the day, and plan tomorrow before leaving. Who knows? Other responses include assess my list for important and urgent and scheduled tasks on calendar. So what now? Quadrant 1, highly urgent, highly important. Do what you can to knock these out before they become urgent. In other words, while they're still in quadrant 2. You see how important that is now? Often, there's not much that can be done about these because they've risen to a level of high urgency. Then there's quadrant 2. I will say this, in quadrant 1, it's actually not there that we find most of our time management problems. Quadrant 2, important but not urgent. Practice planning and doing these. I will say this, make as much of your day as possible focused on matters that are important but not urgent, and stick to your plan as much as possible. Make these sacred and encourage others around you too to do the same thing. It's actually attention to quadrant 2 that separates the effective individuals and organizations from the ineffective ones. Then we get to the time wasters. Quadrant 3, not important to you, seemingly urgent to someone else. Learn to manage and say no to these. Question their importance and downgrade in priority. And then quadrant 4, neither important nor urgent. Avoid activities that provide only a feeling of accomplishment. And if this is a common or recurring activity, follow the advice on procrastination. Why do today what you can put off until tomorrow? And it's actually in quadrants 3 and quadrants 4. Remember, those are both categories with not important activities. It's in these 2 quadrants that we find most of our time management problems. Now, when it comes to prioritizing, let me suggest a context of A and B activities. An A priority is critical for the success of today and in the future. And an A activity is anything which, if not accomplished today, would detract from one or more of these 3 key issues. An A activity is anything which, if not accomplished today, would detract from your job performance, your personal reputation, and or the reputation of your company. And of course, everything else is a B. Anything that's not an A is a B. So when prioritizing, you want to keep in mind the 80-20 rule, which in this context means that when you are prioritizing your action items, look for the top 20% that will produce the greatest payoff. Another way of putting this is take all your high priority action items and sequence them from the first activity should always be the activity which takes the least amount of time, and the last activity in this group should be the activity which is going to take the most amount of time. Think of it this way. Let's say you have 5 A activities, and they are, you estimate 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 15 minutes to get them done. If that's the case, you want to focus on the first 5 activities because those will each only cost you 5 cents if not done. And yet they are the first activity that you considered accomplishing. And I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. So for handling tasks and prioritizing, pardon me, we recommend a flow chart. So here's an example. When it comes to labeling tasks, let's just look at a few tasks. So you accept a task and you ask, is this important? And the answer is no. So you look to the left. Because when something is not important, an activity is not important, you know it is a quadrant 3 or quadrant 4 activity. And so you want to ignore these or downgrade them in priority. Then you ask the question, can I prevent this from happening again, whatever this activity is? And if the answer is no, then stop. Just don't work on it anymore. If the answer is yes, follow the line down and across, because when you can prevent the recurrence or repeating of a non-important activity, in the green box near the bottom, on the left, you see this now becomes a new quadrant 2 task. You are planning on arranging the prevention of a non-important activity. You are arranging to prevent the recurrence of a non-important activity. That in and of itself is an important activity because it's going to save you that much time. Okay, now back to the top, we accept another task. We ask, is it important? The answer here is yes. Is it urgent? The answer again is yes. So we see to the left, this is a quadrant 1 activity. Must it be done now? If the answer is yes, then we do it. Must it be done now? If the answer is no, then we ask, must it be done today? If the answer is yes, we time charge it, we schedule it as an A activity for today. If the answer to the question, must it be done today, is no, then time charge it as an A for a specific day. Favorite example shared with us, in fact, just a little while earlier today, happened at an oil refinery in Texas. The workers, mostly female, have been protesting, saying we need time off. And GM decided to put a number of those women on furlough, meaning they might call them back, and if so, we're not sure when. Amazingly, just amazingly. So again, within this context of quadrant 1, back to when we said, this is important and urgent, it's quadrant 1, must it be done now? And the answer was yes, we did it. But then follow down the path after you took care of this important and urgent activity. You ask yourself the question in the lower left-hand corner, could the urgency be prevented in the future? If the answer is yes, then this gives us a new quadrant 2 task. We're going to arrange the prevention of urgency, and that will make this activity, when it happens again, a quadrant 2 activity. Why? Because it is important, but not urgent. And finally, we accept one more task. Is it important? Yes. Is it urgent? No. Okay, good. It's a quadrant 2 task. Then we ask, does it have a date or deadline? And if the answer is no, we give the task a date or deadline, and we move below. And we ask, is it a be there? So let me define this term be there. Be there is any activity which requires that we engage in this activity on a specific date, at a specific time, and in a specific place. It could be our office, it could be someone else's office, it could be a conference room, it could be a larger meeting venue, and it could be anywhere. And stay with me on this because you'll see how this benefits. So is it a be there? Is this important but not urgent activity an activity where I have to be in a specific place at a specific time on a specific day? And if the answer is yes, I time charge it in my calendar and I encourage and reward quadrant 2 activities for the future. Back to this question though, is it a be there? If the answer is no, then time charge it on my task list. Make it a be there. And then we can encourage and reward important but not urgent activities for the future. And we're ready to move on. So in prioritizing our to-do list, you see we've gone from 4 activities to 6. We've added some. And now we have 8 activities. The next thing we want to do is to label the quadrants. And the good news is 7 of these 8 activities are quadrant 2 activities. They are important but not urgent. Again, this is where we want to be spending as much of our time every day. Quadrant 2. Keep working on activities that are important but not urgent whenever possible. And we list several activities as being A activities, and I'll explain how we selected those in just a moment. Then we add up our A activities. You may remember from before that these 3 A activities add up to 2 hours. However, we add in a buffer, a 10-minute buffer for each of the first 2 activities, or for spreading it across all 3. And we number the A activities on the left, 1, 2, and 3, and we number our B activities. And let me say this, I'm going to back up just a moment here. So you see here where we numbered these 3 A activities. The reason we chose these numbers, look all the way to the right. Setup interview with Sarah is estimated to take 10 minutes or the least amount of time for these 3 A activities. Then just above it, call John Franklin regarding job fair, 20 minutes, the second least amount of time of the 3 activities. And then finally, complete XYZ report, estimated to take an hour and a half, the most time of the 3 activities. Hence the order. You see, by following this order, within 30 minutes, you hopefully will have accomplished 2 of your 3 A activities. You should be able to enjoy that particular day. All right. So now we want to talk about planning our day. We want to plan each day before it begins, before leaving work, at home, and before starting to work. For example, at about 4 o'clock this afternoon, I will start planning my Thursday. Why? Because I want to start planning my next day while I am at ease, not under pressure, not maybe having run to work late and then really being under pressure. No, I want both Kevin, the coach, and myself to have a little bit of time to clear our heads. So first start planning my Thursday this afternoon. Then I recommend that the second time we plan the next day is at home, and I respect any pushback. However, I can tell you this, I can do this every time in less than 5 minutes. Don't do it if you don't want to. However, it only takes 5 minutes. And if you are a night person, then I encourage you to do this the night before. And if you're a morning person like me, I encourage you to do it before you leave the house or your apartment. And then the third time we plan each day is right before we start to work. So I'll arrive, get my cup of coffee, open up my to-do list, say, okay, we've got a schedule, we've got to plan and prioritize right now. And I usually have about 15 to 20 minutes of peace and quiet before people start running in. Okay, so what steps will I take to effectively prioritize? We've asked managers, and they've said, I like focusing on my top 3A activities. Others have said, I focus first on importance, then urgency. Get quadrant 1 stuff done immediately, get it out of the way. Their suggestions continue. Focus on quadrant 2 activities, activities that are of high importance but low urgency. Get the other stuff, quadrant 3 and 4, done when you're able. I say try to ignore it, but others say I'm still going to get it done, but it's the lowest of lowest priorities. Other suggestions, begin before you leave home. I like that. Do a recap at the end of the day to see what you actually achieved. I like that too. Acknowledge your goals. Do the most unpleasant thing first, then you are not dreading it all day. I like that one. Makes a lot of sense. So for planning our day, here are the steps. First, acknowledge your achievements from the previous day. Update your task list. Transfer the be theres into your electronic calendar. As I said before, I have 3 devices that are synced up. So I can make the entries on either my smartphone, my laptop, or my office PC, and they immediately appear on the other 2 devices. Or block out routine activities. We don't mean eliminate them. We mean dedicate a time block for routine activities. For example, email. I can tell you with 100% confidence that I never spend more than 45 minutes a day working on and reviewing and trashing and forwarding emails. 15 minutes at the start of the day, 15 minutes at the middle of the day, 15 minutes close to the end of the day. Absolutely critical that we take charge and direct. So we're looking at an example here of some be theres from this past August 15th. That's right. This must have been when my fiance's mom was making a number of interesting adjustments. Oh, I'm sorry. I neglected to show you the change. So you see here, initially, we had some activities listed. Basically, I blocked out some time for standard activities. Sam with the course, meeting someone for lunch, a staff meeting, planning, working out. And you see when we made the adjustments, look at how by 11:30 that morning, I was able to finish my 3A activities. That's huge. I had to meet with Sam regarding the teen course. I forget exactly why, but I believe she had a travel issue. Then in the afternoon, I'm fine with my staff meeting. I still have another hour from 3:30 to 4:30 to work on B activities. And again, lucky me. We want our goals to be SMART, and that means that they should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time charged. So this equips us to take a look at taking everything we've been talking about today, our efficiency-driven system, and making it an effectiveness-driven system. And the guiding principle here is that doing things faster is no substitute for doing the right things. So we remember our time management skills hierarchy from before. You see, here are some characteristics of true effectiveness. How shall I put this? It's efficient to do things right. It's effective to do the right things right. It's efficient to be practice focused. It's effective to be principle focused. It's efficient to focus on schedules and tasks. It's effective to focus on relationships. And finally, it's efficient to focus on urgent tasks. It's effective to focus on important tasks. Now, we all have a variety of roles, and you're going to see a number of different roles appear here. And I just want to encourage you, just take a moment to identify 3 roles that are important to you. 2 of these should be professional, and 1 can be personal. And they by no means have to appear on the screen. These are just suggestions. I will tell you what my 3 most important roles are: 2 professional, 1 personal. So the first role that's very important to me is a professional role. It's in the far left column, and it is that of coach. I don't mean sports coach. I mean that I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people who need help with this issue or that. The second role I choose that is important is in the middle row, and is that of facilitator. And I consider this one of my most important professional roles because I facilitate processes like strategic planning, team building, getting along with each other, improving communication in the workplace, just to name a few. And finally, in the third column, the role I identify as being important to me, in this case, is a personal one, and it is that of parent. Because I consider the role of parent the most important personal role that I can take on every day. I'm helping to mold and shape another life. So let's name this picture. We take inputs, we put them through a process, and we generate an output. At the same time, along the way, we receive feedback. Most of the feedback is related to the standards we have to observe as we're doing the job. And everything takes place within our workplace environment under certain conditions. Well, this process is known as OPICs because the outputs are what gets produced. The process we followed is the method or strategy that we use. The inputs include people, information, and the material resources that we need to get the job done. The conditions are the absolute requirements. For example, values, deadlines, and budget constraints. And look at that right there. We see deadlines and budget constraints. And what are the 2 most important factors on every project? Aiming to complete our project on time, deadline, and on budget. And finally, this process involves standards. We have metrics, and that often includes milestones along the way to make sure on a project that we are on target, and of course, targets themselves. So when we talk about turning a goal into a reality, we have tasks to complete, which are descriptions of what we're doing. We have objectives to achieve: who, what, when, where, why, and how. We always have product specifications, which are descriptions of our physical deliverables. We always have a program, which is a list of steps we have to follow in order to accomplish our task, and then a schedule, which is when each of these steps will occur. Now, for planning our week, let's remember a moment ago where we identified 3 roles that are important to us, 2 professional and 1 personal. So for each of these 3 roles, as you look to plan your week, you're also prioritizing. So you answer this question for all 3 of your most important roles. What is the most important thing I could do in my 2 professional roles and my 1 personal role this week? Next, evaluate the previous week and answer these 2 questions. What went well and what would I change? And of course, document your accomplishments. Finally, organize your upcoming week, plan time to plan. So I'll give you just a little bit of insight into how I do it. Just as I plan each day 3 times, the day before, the morning of, and then as soon as I arrive at work, I also plan each week 3 times. I start my planning on Thursday, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, but certainly on Thursday. The second time I start planning or continue planning the following week is first thing Friday morning. And the third time I plan, I should say I finalize my plans for the week, is Monday morning after I've arrived. I want to make sure that I'm fresh, ready to plan and prioritize. So we've actually addressed 5 learning objectives. The first is to help you manage your entire team remotely, then to understand the benefits of developing time management skills, to differentiate between different types of tasks, to analyze and use tools for organizing tasks, and finally, to practice proven rules and techniques for managing your time effectively.